Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Shifting Gears, IATF 16949 6th edition, Rules Explained by Experts. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You may have joined the presentation listening using your computer speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the telephone, just select phone call in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. LRQA will share a recording of the webinar with everyone who has registered in the next couple of days. This session will follow a questions and answer format, so you will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenters by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. Any questions that we do not have time to answer during the session will be responded to you after the webinar. For your information, we will be running some live polls today. Please note that the responses are anonymous and the results will only be shared as a percentage result. It is my pleasure to introduce your speakers for today, Juraj Kliment, IATF Lead Auditor at LRQA, and Holly Plackett, Automotive Go-to-Market Manager for LRQA. Over to you.
Thanks, Alex, and hi, everyone. We're so glad you could join us for today's live webinar. So if you previously joined an LRQA hosted session, this session will be a little bit different to usual. Today is all about you and your questions. We'll be diving into the globally recognised quality standard for the automotive industry, IATF 16949, and the recently launched 6th edition rules. Now, before we jump into your questions, I'm going to hand things over to my co-host, Juraj. He's going to give us a quick high-level overview of the IATF 169 6th edition rules to set the stage. And Juraj, if you wouldn't mind giving everyone a brief introduction of yourself before we get started, that would be fantastic.
Thank you very much, Holly. First of all, I'm very pleased and very happy that you invited me. Very happy to be with the team. Briefly about me, I'm involved in automotive certification scheme almost 13 years now. Started with a previous version of the standard ISO TS, and now in IATF I'm also supporting LRQA with internal witness and system audits. So in addition to that, I'm working as an auditor in the railway industry, an ARIS scheme, and also 14001 environmental certification. Okay, so let's talk a bit about the rules itself. I mean, obviously, this is the key document which govern the IATF 16949 certification business and certification scheme. And if we talk about how it's working, basically, IATF as an organization ad hoc created by the OEMs and National Automotive Industry Association creates this document in order to help certification bodies to manage and to be able to certify all the clients around the world. Obviously, rules are binding document for the certification body as well as for the client who are either seeking certification or who are already certified. All the changes to this document are governed similarly to the IATF standard itself through the so-called sanction interpretation, which basically, after the publication, changing the previous requirement, and if they are not met, there are basis for non-conformity, and FAQ, which basically gives an explanation or clarification to the rules and requirement. All these sanction interpretation and FAQs are published on the well-known portal of IATF, www.iatf Global Oversight, which is on the bottom of the slide. So if we can move to the next slide, I'd like to give a little bit of information about the key changes, and I try to highlight the key chapters of the rules which might have an implication for the clients which are already certified or willing to certify. First chapter talks about eligibility, which basically brings a few changes, and some of them I believe are very important, taking into account the current situation on the certification field. Eligibility, talking about the IATF. Now, what has changed and has a significant impact, that there has to be only one certification body for the manufacturing site and standalone remote locations. Basically mean that if you have right now your organization certified in a way that a different certification body certifies just a standalone remote locations, it's not anymore allowed. So basically, your certification body who audits a standalone remote location associated with your quality management system has to have the contract at least with one manufacturing site, which is receiving support from this standard remote location. Obviously, key changes which will impact numerous clients in the world is, we call it extended manufacturing site, which is basically part of the production with a small gravity and size located nearby the main manufacturing site without a standalone certification. Right now, IATF put quite a strict requirement into limit the distance from the main site. And if this requirement, specifically 10 miles or 16 kilometers and no more than 60 minutes drive, obviously all these sites has to be converted right now from this extended manufacturing site scheme into a standalone, into a single manufacturing site. It can be a single manufacturing site, it can be a part of the corporate scheme. If we go to a certification body governance, obviously this relates primarily to the certification body, but would have to be said here that there are a lot of expanded requirements, mainly in impartiality, which we've seen quite still a lot of issues in there, and also expanded requirements for the internal witness audit. As said, these requirements are primarily targeted for the certification body, not for the clients. If we go to the Chapter 3 certification body contractor requirements, there are obviously more additional requirements added, but there's nothing really that much of significant changes. Chapter number 4, again, primarily target audience is the certification bodies. So basically, there are many expanded requirements for the roles which are identified and exist within the certification bodies, like technical reviewers, application reviewers, IATF auditors, internal witness, and system auditors. So if we go into chapter number 5, audit and certification requirements, obviously there are a lot of things which also relates to a certified clients or clients who will seek the certification. The biggest change is removal of 6 and 9 months surveillance cycle, which in fact it was not so frequently used by the clients, but right now there is a unisono requirement to have 12 months surveillance audit frequency across all the certified clients. It has been introduced a concept of additional audit time, which include time to verify the previous NCs, scope expansion, technical expert time, and so on, which is additional to the audit time calculated during the planning phase. There are no more 12 hours audit days as we used to have when we audited night shift. It's not anymore allowed. So basically maximum is a 10-hour day, which basically can consist of 8 hours auditing plus 2 hours of additional time for whatever reason is additional time is dedicated to. Obviously, a new thing, because there was a lot of variation between the certification bodies, has been explicit time allocation for verifying the previous NCs, like a 0.5 hours to 1 hour for minor, and obviously at a special audit for each major non-conformity, it's 1 or 2, 3 hours per each NC, which basically brings kind of a clarity and I would say equal approach between the certification bodies. Obviously, reduction, which will have a significant impact on the corporate schemes, especially because in the past, as you remember, there have been, based on the sites which are part of the corporate audit scheme, there has been various reductions starting from 20 and ending up in 40% maximum if the number of sites within the corporate audit scheme is more than 19. Right now, unisono, there is maximum reduction for the corporate scheme only 15%, which obviously has a pros and cons. One of the cons obviously is a cost implication to the client certified. On the other side, from the audit perspective, we also experience a lot of situations where really the time allocated, taking into account reduction, was not sufficient to perform an effective audit. There are additional requirements for the audit planning we can cover later, remote location auditing, and obviously also for non-conformity management. If we go to audit and certification requirements, there are additional expanded requirements for Chapter 6 application process and audit times. Obviously, there are expanded requirements, especially for the application for a new certification and application review, which is a new process established as part of the preparing the quotation for the client. And obviously, a completely revised and expanded requirements for stage 2 activities and stage 1 activities as well. And obviously, last but not least, the Chapter 7, which basically brings so welcomed approach in automotive scheme. It's a remote auditing allowed under special circumstances nowadays. So basically, this is the high-level overview what we can expect in the rules, what is in there. So we can now move on.
Thanks so much for that, Juraj. We've got some great pre-submitted questions to get us started, but just a quick reminder to the audience that please drop in your questions as we go into the chat and we'll pick those up as we go along. We've got about 45 minutes today, so we'll try and get through as many questions as we can. But as Alex said at the beginning of this session, if we don't get to yours, don't worry, we will make sure every question is answered either in the chat or in a written Q&A document that will be sent out to all of you after the session. Before we dive into the questions, we've put a quick poll on screen to get a sense of where everyone's at with their understanding of the IATF 16949 6th edition rules. So if you could take a second to submit your vote, that would be really helpful, and then we'll jump into the questions. So the poll should be on screen for you now. I can see some of the answers coming in. What is your current understanding of the IATF 16949 6th edition rules? And the answers are as follows. 1, I wasn't aware of the 6th edition rules. 2, I'm aware of the rules but haven't had a chance to look into them. 3, I have quite a good understanding. And 4, I'm fluent in the 6th edition rules. So we'll give it a little bit longer, but so far we can see that at the moment 72 keeps creeping up percent of the audience is aware of the new rules but hasn't had a chance to look into them, so that's great for this webinar. Great audience. Juraj, is that surprising to you at all, or is that kind of what you're expecting?
It's kind of what I expected, because I assume that majority of our audience are already certified clients. So basically, there has to be an understanding of a current revision of the rules. And obviously, there are some, I would say, key changes, but there are other things which has been rather from making it colorful to rather black and white. So there won't be any surprises. It just clear the air and really make it like a more technical specification rather than generic rules. So not a surprise, and happy to see that there are few attendees. They have a good understanding already in the rules, because obviously we as a third-party auditors has to pass the exam till the end of this year in order to be able to audit according to the new rules from the 1st of January 2025. So happy to see that there are clients which are already better than a lot of auditors right now.
Yeah, that's great. 73% I think that was who haven't had a chance to look into it, and I believe around 20% have a good understanding, so that's great. Hopefully you learned something today during this session. Awesome. So let's kick off, shall we? Juraj, I'd like to start with some scene setting, or with a scene setting question, if I may. And we can see some questions coming in, so we'll get to those shortly. But to kick us off, could you give us an overview of the IATF certification scheme, please?
Oh, thank you for that question. It's really important to start with that. Yes, obviously, as we discussed, how the IATF was created, consist the members. So we have the OEM makers there. At the moment, there are 11 key customers, which obviously brings an importance of the automotive supply chain, because obviously they are creator of the IATF standard, and the main purpose is to make sure that the supply chain providing the components to the Tier 2, Tier 1 and OEM customers has a certain quality management system set up. And in addition to that, we have 5 national associations, namely FIEF, ANFIA, VDA, QMC, IOB, and SMMT, and obviously all the 43 certification bodies which are now approved to perform the IATF audits are distributed between these 5, let's say we call them oversight offices, which helps to govern the certification scheme. And just for your understanding, and maybe just a comparison, because we operating in a transportation segment, which basically brings 3 key certification schemes: IATF, which is targeted for automotive; IRIS, which is targeted for rail; and AS 9100, which is targeted for the aerospace segment. And if you take 3, which we group into the transportation scheme, we now have for automotive around 95,000 certificates worldwide. If you take aerospace, now at the moment it's around 23,000, and the railway around 2,300. And if you take this number, you can see the strength and the power of automotive scheme in comparison with other which deal with the transportation. So it's very important to say that we have a lot of certificates. On the other side, that's one of the things which I think IATF is struggling these days. We have worldwide around 3,300 auditors, which is taking into account we have almost 100 certificate, which is not enough. Obviously, the scheme is very tough, and the application and exams for the new auditors, new applicants, are not easy to pass. So it's really challenging. But as I said, in comparison with others, IATF really is the key in the transportation segment and has really a lot of certificates worldwide. Obviously, if you take the distribution, the logic would say, the Asia take precedence, and it's true, more than 50% of all the certificates which are distributed worldwide belongs to China. So that would be an explanation of the IATF from my side in a nutshell. Obviously, if there will be more questions, I'm more than happy to answer them, but that would be an IATF scheme in a nutshell.
Thanks, Juraj. And the next question I have for you is around the 6th edition rules, please. Could you explain to us how they came about?
Yeah, that's another good question, because if we take in the history and going backwards, when the ISO TS standard has been converted to IATF standard, there has been, to me, much more open communications to all the interested parties within IATF group, not only the IATF itself certification bodies, but there has been a lot of discussions and meetings held also with the suppliers and users and certified organizations and other interested parties within the scheme to make the standard better. And from that time, I see the similar approach applied in the rules. If we take especially the 6th edition, I was already involved in 3 revisions of the rules from the beginning. So if we take the 6th revision, it was probably the most challenging revision in the history, because it brought a lot of input from all the interested parties, thousands of them. And obviously, if we take it from May 2023, when it was released to I would say, public comments to all the interested parties, it took them almost 3/4 of the year to go through all the comments, requirements, and so on, and to publish a new revision of the rules in a March 2024. So it was quite a challenging task for IATF to take all this information and try to make the best out of all the comments they received, and to make this document live, and obviously have enough time for the client to accommodate their business certification body, their business, in order to be in compliance with the new rules from January 25. So that would be my summary of your question. Hope it is satisfactorily, but as I said, if there are more questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Brilliant, thanks, Juraj. Another question, and this was coming directly from the audience. Does the new edition affect the internal audits regarding IATF?
Can you read the question because I couldn't hear it?
Yes, of course. Does the new edition affect the internal audits regarding IATF?
If we speak in the internal audit at the client, not really.
Cool, easy. And another question, can you please clarify indirect remote locations? How should the organisation identify these, and how are they communicated to the certification body?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because obviously from my personal perspective, this new introduction of indirect support, or we call it remote of remote, will bring a lot of discussions, a lot of mess into the system, at least at the beginning. If we can give the clients a little bit of understanding, a specific example of what does it mean remote of remote. If we take an example of a standalone remote location, which per definition is a site when there is no manufacturing, is there purely like a design center, or it's a central purchasing function. And obviously, this location received the support, let's say, in IT. Obviously, a lot of these activities are computer-based. They need support. And this support is provided to this non-manufacturing standalone remote location from the other entity. Like, one is sitting in Paris, and the IT central function is residing in US. And obviously, what IATF wants, first of all, client to understand if such a remote of remote functions exist within the QMS. So they need to be aware that there is a certain support like that within their quality management system. And obviously, I believe it will be part of the audit planning process for the certification body to allow them to recognize such a remote of remote and then communicate it. And obviously, there is advantage of this remote of remote that all people who are involved in this support can join the audit of standalone remote location remotely if they're working remotely, so they can call in and be audited. Like, you don't need to necessarily go to audit IT in America because of the indirect support. And the consequence, obviously, the details will be in the report, but this remote of remote support will not appear on the client certificate. So I would not say it's a second class of the support, but the only support which will be listed is the standard support provided from existing remote location or standard remote location as a primary support. But obviously, IATF wants to have a clarity also on this second level of support, but it will not be appearing on the certificate, only in IATF reports.
Great, thanks, Juraj. So this attendee would like to know more about the rules related to the distance between the two sites, and if there is some waiver which could be executed.
I don't think there will be willingness from IATF to approve any such a waiver. That's why they put it crystal clear. And we already had an internal discussion, and I would not believe that they will be willing to, because if they will start to approve it, it will create another level of discussions. And right now, I understand it will be a challenge. It will be a challenge for a lot of clients who have extended manufacturing sites to convert them to a regular manufacturing site. But I'm not really thinking that IATF would release the degrees of freedom in this case and would allow any waiver. And I think, obviously, recently, and it's well-known information, IATF released a Q&A presentation, which is available on IATF web pages. You can download it. And this has been developed based on the question received from the certification bodies. And there is a question related to that. And I think the answer, the waiver for such a situation when you have, let's say, 20 kilometers or 1 hour and 5 minutes drive, if there would be an exception given from IATF through the waiver, I'm not sure IATF would be willing to do so, as I said before.
Cool. Thanks, Juraj. So this attendee has said, we manage RSL offices only, and most of the sites do paperwork activities only. So no design, no warehouse, no physical activities at the site, mostly sales and admin support. So the question they've asked based on this is, can they do 18-month cycles and remote auditing at these sites?
Let me read the questions again. We manage remote only, and most of the sites do paperwork activities only. No design, no warehouse, no physical activities, mostly sales and money. Can we do support? Just to clarify the frequency of the audits at the remote locations, there are obviously remote locations which are existing at the manufacturing site, and standard remote location when there is no manufacturer. This would be a standard remote location if it's not really with the manufacturing. For such a cases, now on, there will be an initial or transfer audit when you transfer the remote location to other CB, and there will be only a sequence of surveillance visits. There will not anymore a recertification audit in such a site. If we're looking at sales activities, that would fit into the group of non-product design, which basically means they can have an initial or transfer audit, or under the old rules, last recertification audit, and then one audit in a minimum in the 24 months, taking into account same rotation as for the main manufacturing sites, meaning that taking last days of recertification, transfer, finish audit, plus 12 months, minus 3 plus 3 months. So basically, if it's sales, if I had a recertification in November this year, my next minimum audit has to be November 2025 plus minus 3 months, or November 2026 plus 3 months minus 3 months. There is no like an 18-month cycle for these locations. There's always 12 months. And these locations, standard remote locations with no manufacturing, will have a sequence of surveillance audit continuing like that. So there won't be any recertification audit after 3 years. It will be like surveillance 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, like this. So there won't be any 18 months cycle. It will be once, but obviously 12 months plus, 12 months plus, not 18 months somewhere in the middle, 12 months plus minus 3. So for such a case, if we fit this 8 months into this interval, 12 months minus 3, you can do that. Yes, you can have minimum one audit based on agreement with your certification body, because obviously it can be 2, but minimum is 1. Hope I understood it correctly and answered correctly.
Thanks, Juraj. So we've got another quick poll for the audience before we get back into the questions, and that should be appearing on screen very shortly. And this time we're asking, based on what you have seen or heard so far, what are your main concerns with IATF 16949 6th edition rules? And the answers are as follows. 1, communication within my organization, for example, training. 2, communication outside of my organization, for example, the certification body. 3, non-conformity management. 4, audit duration changes, or other. 5. So we'll give that a few seconds for everyone to submit their votes. It's looking like more of a split than previous poll. Currently, audit duration changes is the number one concern. Juraj, does that?
No,
Yeah,
no surprise,
not
because I do
surprising.
believe there
Yeah.
are also representative of corporate schemes here. And obviously, yes, it will have a significant, as I said, also the cost implications on the client side. And obviously on the CB side, because if you take now 40 to 15%, it means effectively more audit days, which will require more audit resources on the certification body side. So it will be huge, and I'm not surprised. Non-conformity management, yes, there are kind of things related to that also getting more strict. Communication is pretty much the same. Communication within my organization, obviously it's a new thing. It's a new thing. A lot of new things takes time to understand. And obviously, as you've seen already, the question from a certification body, which end up almost 230 slides, there still are a lot of way to how to interpret the rules. Even they became more black and white right now, so it's much more clear, but still there are a lot of questions, and I'm assuming that at least in the first year there will be more and more questions raised. And obviously, as I noticed in the Q&A presentation published, there already are some sanction interpretation to the already released new rules, which will change some of the wording inside the document, because obviously some of the issues has been spotted there during the feedback sessions.
Great. So we'll get back into the questions now, if that's okay with you, Juraj.
No problem.
The next one from this attendee is, does the distance requirement regarding the extended sites apply when the organisation has already initiated a new certification cycle?
Everything. The question is, what does it mean initiated? Because all existing extended manufacturing site, even already certified, has to take into new rules into application from January at the first audit they have. And obviously, if you already have certified EMS, you have to change the rules, and you have to, if you had an initial audit somewhere in November, then in the next audit, obviously, you have to figure out and you have to transfer it into a single manufacturing site. Doesn't matter what has been agreed in the previous version of the rules in current 2024 year. I don't know if I understood it fully correctly. If no, please put more specific information into the questions, because I might not understand it fully.
Cool. We'll wait to see if that attendee puts anything further into the question box.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, next question. According to the new rules, is it mandatory to sample all manufacturing sites that receive support in the audit cycle? And what if the number of supported sites is high and there is a large quantity of supported manufacturing sites? Has the audited location ensured that the sampling is covering all locations in the cycle?
Yeah, that's indeed very good questions. We have a lot of situations when there is a standalone remote location provided support to numerous sites. It can be hundreds. Yeah, obviously there is no requirement in Rule 6 to sample all supporting function interface to all supported sites receiving support from the standalone over the three. It would not be practical and possible for the auditors. Obviously, priority has to be given to the sites which really has the biggest importance. Obviously, performance. Obviously, new sites which has been introduced as a support has to be verified, and obviously, minimum requirements at least 3 sites has to be sampled during the visit, which obviously might take into account the situation which we experience from time to time is that the auditors accepting the report from the other certification body doesn't see the evidence of support provided to the manufacturing side he's auditing right now. Obviously, the CARA, which is the Common Audit Reporting System used now for all the IATF audits across the world, has a specific and default content which all the support functions and all the supported sites has to be listed. But obviously, in terms of evidences in the process box, you might end up in the situation that over the 3-year cycle, if there is hundreds of remote supporting function, auditor will not find the evidence for the specific site he wants to see that. But obviously, at least in the list of remote supporting functions and site supported, receiving support, all the sites has to be listed as they are supported. And obviously, it's a key role for the certification body to make sure that over the sequence of surveillance visit, the next visit, the sampling effectively covers as much as possible during the time allocated. So that would be a short answer to your question. It's really tricky sometimes. I also experience such a situations that I've been asked to add additional information. But as I said, if you have 3, it's an easy task. You should do it over the cycle. You can do it over the visit. But if you really have 80, 100 and more, which might be the case, it is not possible and not practicable.
Thanks, Juraj. We have a follow-up question to a question earlier, and it's, I think, looking for a bit of clarification or to understand if they've understood correctly. It's up to the IATF to decide and not the certification body to give a waiver/exemption regarding the distance between two factories. Is that correct? In this attendee's case, the distance is 21 kilometres.
Can you repeat that? I didn't hear you.
Yes, looking for some clarification.
Yeah.
It's up to the IATF to decide and not the certification body as whether or not to give a waiver or exemption regarding the distance between the two factories.
Obviously, who submits the waiver is a certification body. But the first filter of, to understand the content of the waiver and really if the waiver makes sense and it will be approved, it's a first filter, the certification body. But if certification body, yes, they asked, they agreed on the waiver content, they submitted to the oversight office, but the ultimate decision is on IATF for this particular example. Only IATF can make a decision if yes or no.
Great, thanks, Juraj. Next question. In case the audit at a standalone remote support location shall be failed for some reason, does it necessarily mean that the decertification process of multiple manufacturing sites would be initiated?
This is good questions. Yeah, it might, but it will be technically very challenging because obviously different manufacturing sites has a different audit cycles and different times for the audit. But yeah, there might be a situation that all the sites will be impacted by the loss of the or if the audit was not performed or failed, it may impact all of the sites within the scheme. But obviously, this would need a clearly further follow-up from IATF to understand it. Because as I said, if it's a single one, it will have. But if there are multiple sites within the scheme, and if you lose the audit at the remote location, obviously it cannot be listed, but the certificate decision on the site receiving support is also impacted. So I would need a further follow-up on this, and I'm glad this question was raised, and I will take a note and I will look at it and ask for clarification. Thank you for that question.
Thanks, Juraj. And just to mention again, any questions that haven't been fully answered today will be answered either in written or in the chat. So written follow-up communication or in this chat. So don't worry if your question isn't answered live today. So next question. How about the and construction for extended manufacturing sites? It doesn't seem to make sense according to this attendee. And/or construction would be better.
Can we ask the person who submitted the question to rephrase it, because I don't understand the word construction, what really he means under that. If would be nice if he can rephrase the question or ask it more in a prescriptive way so I understand what does it mean. If it really like create a QMS, full QMS, instead of having it as part of the QMS of the main site, or it's a different meaning of the question. So I'd like to answer it in a proper way. So I'll ask for the clarification of this specific question.
Yeah, if any clarity can be provided, please do put that in the question box and we'll try and answer that live. Thank you so much. Okay, next question. Juraj, you mentioned that there are sanctioned interpretations for the Rule 6 already.
There will be.
Yeah, this attendee is asking where they can find them as they can't locate them on the IATF website.
So because the Rules 6 edition is quite a new document, and there will be probably 2, not that more at the moment, as far as I know, according to the Q&A document. These sanction interpretation will be published on IATF webpage, as mentioned, close to the sanction interpretation and FAQs for the IATF standard itself. But as I said, at the moment, there are not yet officially published sanction interpretation. To my knowledge, there are 2 of them which will be published. It's more like a small clarification of the terms used in the rules, but nothing really significant to my knowledge. And they will be, once they're published, they will be available. And all of you guys who has active subscription, and I'm strongly encourage you to do so, to subscribe to IATF Oversight page on the right bottom side for free, and you will receive every notification from this web page. Whatever has been published there, you will receive notification to your email, so you will be aware of something new there. But at the moment, there are no new sanction interpretation related to Rule 6 published yet.
Great, thank you, Juraj. Next question. So if the support related to product design is no longer active, or if the evidence provided is older than 24 months, does it have to be removed? And are there different approaches for other supporting functions such as laboratory?
That's a good question indeed. I think at the moment there is no like a crystal rule for that. And I'm taking my experience, and I've seen also different approaches applied to different CBs and different auditors. And me personally, if I do not see any vital activities related to the product design within the cycle, I'm removing the product design and also other activities. I'm taking the cycle using the common sense as a time frame. If I do not see any new changes in design, no new design activities, no changes to the already developed design, doesn't make sense to have this listed, because there you might have a client who designed product 15 years ago, but from that time on, they don't have a capability to do more new designs. They just live from this old design created 15 years ago. And obviously, as an auditor, you need to see and then really a live process bringing new things on the desk, and see activities of design, verification, validation. And you can't really look on one example over the 10 or 15 years, and based on that judging the client's ability to design. So my personal view, and respectful to the others, it's not an official interpretation. My personal view, if I don't see an activity, doesn't matter if it's product design or other, over the 3 years, I'm tending to remove it from the support, because it doesn't make sense to look more than 3 years to the same examples without no further activities, no further changes. That would be my answer.
Great, thank you, Juraj. This attendee has asked, how about the 10 miles and no more than 60 minutes for extended manufacturing sites? It doesn't seem to make sense. I would have expected this to be 10 miles or no more than 60 minutes. Is this a mistake?
No,
Could
it
you
is not a
clarify,
mistake.
please, Juraj?
This is exactly how it is, as we discussed it also with IATF. Yes, we have. I will give you the extreme examples. Okay, we had clients which, to me, having in 1 hour, probably even 16, 20, 25 kilometers still makes sense. Yeah. But on the other side, we experience to have a site extension in a different country with a distance of 300, 400, 600 kilometers. Does it really make sense? So obviously there is no, I think that there doesn't exist any common sense border in terms of distance and time. So IATF made a decision. I'm also not very happy with this, but this is in line with making rules more black and white, with leaving a minimum space for interpretation and different interpretation from the certification bodies. So that's why it's like it is. I'm not happy. We have few clients which also will struggle with that, but we have to somehow adopt it to the new situation, the new requirements. It will be very challenging, I know, but I don't think as it is, it's a mistake as far as I know. It's like it is. And yes, I agree with the attendee that it not really make that much sense.
Thank you, Juraj. Question about the corporate scheme.
Yeah.
What are the main changes related to the corporate scheme except the time reduction? Are there some other relevant changes that create non-conformities?
Oh, yeah, I went through the requirement, and if I may be precise, it's like, to me, the requirement now, it's becoming more, I would say, more clear, and because the rules fifths really put a quite a vague definition of corporate scheme, distribution between supporting functions, and distribution between the main side and manufacturing side. It kind of to me very vague. And now it comes to my mind, like, if I read that, have a localization of the quality management system documentation and records only at the level of working instructions and procedures, which brings to be that really there have to be a central level of documentation managed. There have to be a centrally managed internal quality management system audit program, which might be challenged because how we define centrally managed, is it really controlled, programmed from the corporate, and so on, or this responsibility would be still under the manufacturing side, and it's really like a high level guideline. These things are to me quite new, and obviously uh, that would need a more clarification. So I encourage the clients who work or who are certified by a different CB to raise the questions toward the CB to make it sure that it's understood on both sides the same way, to avoid any further discussion of this problem. Because obviously, right now, corporate scheme still have the reduction of 50%, which is lower, but obviously still is there. And obviously, client has to demonstrate, an auditor has to verify that the organization still meet the corporate scheme IATF rules requirement. Okay, so that would be a thing. So more of the centralization, having a centralized function, which really helps managing the organization. So yeah, there are, I would say, more precise rather than vague requirements for the corporate scheme in the previous version. So to me, these two things um, has to be clarified, and similarity in other things, similar quality management system. So there might be a corporate schemes that have a completely different business activities, different process landscape between the plants, and that might be also the questions, what is the similarity between these sites if they're running pretty much different things and different process landscape. So I think these things has to be clarified with the CBs to understand it correctly. Maybe there would be a further communication from IATF as well. I don't know. At the moment, to me, the requirements are much more strict, coming more towards like a copy paste system across all the certified organization within the corporate audit scheme. So that would be my answer to that. So I think this area would also need a little bit of clarification and questions from the clients, especially the certified under the corporate audit scheme.
Great, thank you, Juraj. We are over the 45 minutes, but we do have until the hour, so we'll keep answering, or we'll answer a couple more questions, and there'll be one final poll in the chat before the end of this session. So the next question, Juraj, is can you please explain the change affecting the audit cycle where only 2 annual surveillance audits are needed per site in a 3-year audit cycle? Does this mean that there will be 2 surveillance audits and 1 recertification audit, i.e. 3 audits in 3 years?
If we're speaking about manufacturing sites, there will be 3 audits. Yes, initial transfer recertification, if we take a starting point, and every year 1 audit as a surveillance, and then again recertification or transfer if you move to a different CB. For the standalone remote locations, talking about the locations which doesn't have any manufacturing and have product design responsibility, there is an annual frequency, 12 months plus minus 3 months. And for non-design, there can be minimum of 2. There have to be minimum of 2, but there can be also 3, all of them with the annual frequency. In the case of surveillance visit, plus minus 3 months. For That's what it is now for the standard relocation. There is no recertification, so every year, every 12 months, plus minus 3 months for standard relocation with no product design responsibility.
Thank you, Juraj. So the next question, because of the group scheme, e.g., for example, one company is IATF certified, another is not, different certification bodies, is there a central QM function required in the corporate scheme?
I missed the last part of it. Can you repeat the question, please, Holly, for me?
Yes, of course. I think this person's saying because of their group scheme, one company is IATF certified, another is not, different certification bodies involved. Is there a central QM function required in the corporate scheme?
Yes. But there might be yeah, there is. Yeah.
Okay.
It
So,
doesn't necessarily need to be a headquarter, but there has to be a central function.
okay, thank you. I think we probably have time for one more question, and then we'll put the final poll on the screen. So the final question that we'll answer in today's session, and any other questions that we didn't get around to, will be answered in the follow-up written question and answer document that we shared with everyone. So the final question, regarding product design in scope for the certification, if the company is assembling a product with bought components, unless one component that is produced at the company's plant, this component is designed with clear support from our R&D department, how should the company handle scope for the certificate?
In terms of product design responsibility, I think the rules didn't change that much. So there are only two options. The organization, and if we're talking the R&D, which can be located at the manufacturing site, which do the assembly, or it's located in a different physical address as a standalone location. But overall, this organization is one in front of the customer eyes and saying, yes, we do develop the product, we do design, we own the design, we created the product and we manufacture it, that this site cannot say we are not product design responsible. And doesn't matter if it's really a remote standalone remote location who providing design, or the design is handled within the manufacturing premises, which manufactures the parts. Okay, so there's no difference. It was always like that. Obviously, sometimes misinterpreted also by the certification bodies. So in such a case, if you are in front of the customer, the organization who really design and develop the product, you cannot really state that you only manufacture. Okay, so it might be, or there might be a combination that for some of the product you only manufacture and some of the product you also design, but then has to be clearly distinguished on the scope. So if you have combined responsibilities, it might be the case as well that you are build to print and also product design responsible, but your scope has to clearly distinguish that if all both activities are under the scope of the IATF certification.
Great, thanks, Juraj. So we're almost at time. We are going to put one final poll on screen, which should appear very shortly. The results of this poll will not be shared on the screen. It will be confidential. So the final poll is, will your organisation be looking for any of the following services in the next 12 months? And the options are IATF 16949 gap analysis, IATF certification, IATF training, other assurance services, or other training. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining Juraj and myself today for this session, and I do hope you found it to be informative. We've had a lot of questions come in, and we're very aware that we haven't got around to answering every single one of them, so we will be following up in a written Q&A document, and we will be reaching out to individuals with some of the answers to the questions that you've had. That haven't been answered. So I'm going to hand back over to Alex now to close out the session. Thanks again for joining us, and we hope to see you at the next one.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you, Juraj. And thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. Should you be interested in receiving more information about LRQA, please contact us on www.lrqa.com. On behalf of LRQA and our presenters, thank you for joining us today and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.